What this hiker met with inside the depths of a slot canyon changed his life forever. Going on adventures can be a lot of fun. There's something about exploring a new place you've never been to that just fills you up with a good feeling. We're all curious by nature, and to experience the things that a new place has to offer is probably why we continue going on trips or trekking and camping. This guy was on a quest to explore the Great Arizonian Canyon when he encountered something unbelievable inside. This is a man who goes by the name of Zachary Anderegg. His life had always been an adventurous one when he'd often go and explore sites by himself. Even as a kid, he loved nature and always took a chance to learn. He loves to hike and adores mountain climbing too. He would often spend his time hiking in Arizona and the southern parts of the Utah canyons. Even though Anderegg has often visited the Grand Canyon, there was one particular episode that will leave an impact on him for all his life. He was going about his usual routine, but one of these adventures at the canyon was truly out of the ordinary. He went on to discover something that was going to change the way he lived his life. There was something that Zachary loved to do. It would definitely be exploring caves, mountains, and water bodies. However, if you ask him, his absolute favorite things to spend time doing was to survey the slot canyons located in the northern region of Arizona. On June 20th, 2010, he didn't expect that his hike would lead him to discover something he never thought was possible to be found. The day started off with a very wonderful morning. Zachary decided that it would be better if he went for an easier hike to start off his day. The sun shone brightly and the skies were crystal clear. Moreover, the air that day was dry, which made it an ideal start to off the adventure. He was quite excited to get on with his plans for the day. Zachary loved to go hiking alone in the canyons and would always find something new to discover each time he went. And as he was traversing through the Slot Canyon, he went deeper and deeper. As he descended deep inside the rocky depths, he didn't know what to expect. The gaps between the walls of the Slot Canyon slowly closed in and the light began to dim down. Some areas of the Slot Canyons were so caved in that there was little to no light at all. But even though Zachary went inside the depths of the canyon, he found that there was enough light that could guide him across the bottom areas of the gorge. This was just the beginning of his adventure, and he slowly descended even further and further. The more he went inside, you would expect that the light would be gone, but as he went further inside, Zachary found out that wasn't the case at all. The further he went in, slowly the walls of the canyon started to open up, letting the sun shine through the tiny slots. He went ahead and then found a distinctive opening. There was so much more he was going to discover. Zachary had gone quite deep inside the canyon, 100 feet to be exact. It was then that Zachary found out that he was going to have to abseil his way down the remaining spaces. He had reached a point where there was a very deep incline. Since he'd been doing this for a long time now, Zachary was sure he'd be able to accomplish this, but there was pitch darkness below. As you know, the canyon is rugged and uneven, with many dips, holes, and openings that's certainly not uniform. So when Zachary made it through the first incline, there was another drop that was about 20 feet waiting next. Zachary had to make use of the big boulders present with his climbing gear to be safe from injuries. It would undoubtedly be a terrifying feat to have to make your way down a 20-foot deep gorge. However, since Zachary had done this in the past, it wasn't that big of a challenge, and so he landed safely down under. After going through leaps and bounds, there was yet another discovery that would make that day. So can you take a guess of what he found there? It would have been around 350 feet under the canyon's edge when Zachary discovered something insane. He saw that there was a puppy there, stuck with no means to escape. Zachary couldn't believe that the dog had actually made it alive after an apparent fall into the gorge. He could see the dog didn't end up with broken bones but was clearly malnourished. He immediately felt a strong pity for the dog, who was so helpless inside the depths of this Slot Canyon. As he examined the area where he discovered the dog, he was able to come up with a strong assumption. He was sure that someone had left this dog to die here heartlessly. He felt so bad for the poor pup and was determined to get the dog out of there as soon as possible. Since the dog was clearly dying because of starvation, Zachary knew he didn't have too much time on his hands if he wanted to save it. He quickly got out of the canyon to go and fetch some food and water for the poor pup. Since he was going to take some time to rescue the dog, Zachary knew that he needed to feed the pooch. He also needed an upgrade in his climbing gear. The dog was definitely not in a good condition whatsoever. Who knows how long it had been waiting there for someone to finally take him out of his misery. Zachary the hiker was certain that he had to be very quick with his rescue if he wanted to save the dog on time. The abandoned dog was in critical condition, so Zachary would have to get to the vet as soon as possible. When Zachary rushed out of the canyon, the only thing he could find that could be of potential help was a cat carrier. He had to buy this from the nearest local animal shelter he could find. The fire and police departments, after being informed, had already expressed that they couldn't be of help. Zachary had to take matters into his own hands. After some investigating was done on the dog, Zachary could tell the poor dog was indeed in a way worse condition health-wise than he could have ever imagined. The dog was in such a bad state, and if he wasn't rushed to the vet real soon, he would certainly wither away. The hiker wasted no time to use the crate to lift the dog up to the surface. As soon as he could get the dog out of the deep pits of the canyon, Zachary ran with the pooch to the nearest vet he could find. In the first animal hospital he found, the doctors told Zachary that the sick pooch was going to have to stay 2 days in order to recover. The vets worked on improving the dog's health and discovered that he had been abused before. You'd think it was bad enough that the little guy had fallen into the gorge, but there were actually way more problems the dog endured before. The doctors found shotgun pellets along the sides of his body, and that wasn't all. His teeth had completely become black due to the absence of nourishment. How could anyone be this cruel? Even though the abandoned dog was physically very weak, there was still something in him that made him not give in. He was still positive and didn't want to give up on living his life. After taking him to the animal hospital and dealing with him, Zachary and his wife decided to keep him under their care as he recovered. They were looking for a forever home for him too. The dog was undergoing a lot of medical treatment since he had so many problems with his health. He couldn't even stand properly when he was released. But Zachary revealed that despite his weakness, the dog would wag his tail and show appreciation each time they met. Even though the couple didn't know what the future held, they were happy to nurse him back to health. It must be the overflow of love and care that made the dog become stronger in a short span of time. After some time, the abandoned pup could walk and run on his own again. Pretty soon he was able to play around and interact with his rescuer, who decided to name him Shadow. They grew closer and closer, and not long after, they became inseparable. The initial plan was for Shadow to live in Zachary and his wife's house for a while. This plan was soon changed after the couple was caught by the feeling that they had already considered him a part of the family. Zachary was certain that the meeting with his dog in the canyon was not by chance, but that they were destined to meet, which prompted him to pen his memoirs. To discover an injured dog deep in the depths of a canyon is something that none of us would ever have thought was possible. So obviously this was something straight out of the ordinary. How many of us can say we have rescued a dog from a canyon? This story was interesting enough for the local news channels to feature them, and pretty soon they even made TV appearances. It is such a blessing to see that Zachary and Shadow, the dog, had such an interesting encounter with each other. After they decided to keep him, Zachary and his wife decided to give the name Riley to the dog instead. Zachary believes that Riley had come into his life to teach him to be a better person. They went on adventures everywhere. Have you ever seen a koala boarding a flight? 4 koalas had been borrowed by the country Singapore from Australia for the 50th independence anniversary of the city-state. These koalas were treated very well as they traveled in Qantas Airline. These cute koalas were served with hot towels and eucalyptus leaves as a photo shoot took place on the plane during their journey. Something strange took place on Cape Peninsula in Cape Town, South Africa. About 500 baboons spread into 16 groups are living here now. The city life has certainly taken a toll on how they behave. Since they are protected by the government, humans and baboons have to live together there. These baboons are actually quite the nuisance and would occasionally try snatching whatever pedestrians have in their hands, near the market areas, and even broke into apartments too. On April 1, 2015, a coyote was spotted on top of the LIC bar in Vernon Avenue. To say it alarmed the people living in the building would be an understatement. The cops and animal control officers did their best to get the coyote out, but it was too nimble and quick, managing to escape from an open window in the building. LIC owner Brian Porter expressed his concern, "I'm hoping that's the last of it. There's a lot of people walking those streets, a lot of people walking their dogs, a lot of kids." Why would sharks ever find themselves enter the Venice canals of Los Angeles? Because of the heavy tides, many sea creatures along with these sharks find themselves crawling in the waters of this posh neighborhood. Sheena Dougal, who works as a visual effects supervisor for feature films, who occasionally volunteers for Pump Aid, discovers these sharks on February 2014, and the photos she uploaded on Twitter soon became a viral sensation. Jaws, anyone? So where did these 2 male kangaroos decide on settling their differences? Well, it was certainly a shocking sight to see when 2 kangaroos had a beatdown in a residential street in an Australian suburb. Have you ever seen something this unusual? A clip was posted on YouTube by Rodney Langham that showed the two kangaroos battling it out in New South Wales, Australia, like something straight out of a cartoon. 2012 was the year the police in Cascade, Iowa would never ever forget. Officers were faced with a 55-year-old man named Gerald Ryder inside a parking lot in his car and doghouse lounge. They were two friends of his in the front seat, a zebra and a macabre parrot. He told the police that they were often allowed inside despite the bar owner's denial. Sadly, Gerald was intoxicated, and even though he wasn't driving, it's still a crime to be in the driver's seat drunk.